And we continue to get a number of letters from our viewers concerning our coverage of the war in the Gulf. We'd like to share some more of them with you right now. This one from Longwood, Florida. I find myself resenting the adverse publicity you're receiving with regard to censorship, the limitation of information that you can broadcast, and particularly the contributions of Peter Arnett. Peter Arnett is surely a hero. He's an intelligent, mature, experienced, talented journalist, and the full impact of his contributions will only be known when he has had an opportunity to return to the United States and put his experience and knowledge and perceptions together with all the facts that he does not know at this time. I hope he wins a Pulitzer Prize for his efforts.
This letter comes to us from Indonesia. If I were a U.S. citizen, I would be ashamed of the bias towards Iraq in the current Gulf War coverage by what appears to be a U.S.-owned broadcaster. It is not time for the U.S. media, perhaps CNN in particular, to voluntarily cut back on its speculative, sensational, and sarcastic approach to reporting on successes and failures of the U.S. and allies.
And from Shasta Lake, California comes this letter. The several letters attacking CNN policy to broadcast Iraqi news coverage disturbs me. Yes, we stand behind our troops, and 100%. And yes, we support President Bush. But there are at least two sides to every conflict. Reporting from a single standpoint would not be covering the war. Let us not forget that Iraqis are human beings capable of suffering tremendous pain as they witness their homes and country being destroyed. The war is taking place in their backyard. CNN makes it abundantly clear that most broadcasts concerning the war in the Gulf are censored. Regardless of how slanted they may be, the reports from Iraq broaden our perception and understanding of the war.
This letter comes from New York. This hastily prepared note is to convey to you my immediate objection to CNN video coverage from Baghdad. How can you so thoroughly serve the propaganda ends of Saddam Hussein al-Takridi? You certainly are not ignorant down there, so one must assume a conscious, volitional participation with the enemy of our country, indeed the civilized world. This alone is a fatal flaw in an otherwise invaluable and unique news service.
If you'd like to send us your comments, you may write CNN at 1 CNN Center, Post Office Box 105366, Atlanta, Georgia.
You know, the Americans close their ears, close their eyes, not to listen to our grievances.
Tension heightened this week when Jordan's King Hussein blasted the U.S.-led Gulf Alliance in an address to the nation.
The world had known cruel wars, but never one like this, that is waged against Iraq.
That heated up the war of words with Washington.
It appears to be a shift in the Jordanian position, and yet we're concerned about it and don't understand some of the rhetoric coming out of there. On the other hand, we've always had a historically good relationship with Jordan. But this complicates things.
Washington's announcement that it may re-examine financial aid to Jordan has only increased the anti-U.S. government feelings here.
No, he's not giving it to Jordan any money. He's got just to give it to Israel.
They were good people, but now we think that they are the baddest people in the whole world.
The Jordanian economy has been teetering because of the loss of trade caused by the UN sanctions against Iraq. The possible cutoff of U.S. aid is not expected to have much effect. Such aid has been shrinking for years. The concern is that the United States will use its influence to get others to reduce their aid to Jordan.
That's not fair to a country like Jordan, which is known to be a moderate country, a democratic country with free economy, with open-mindedness to the West.
The impact is not only economic. The hard line from the United States is pushing many Jordanians closer to Iraq politically and further from the United States. In Friday prayer sessions, there were strong attacks on the United States and its Gulf allies. Worshippers poured into the streets of Jordan's capital city in simultaneous marches from mosques. The protesters carried signs and shouted, "Death to America." Relations between Jordan and the United States are growing increasingly frayed. Years of working with each other as old allies are now being replaced with shouts and the threat of not talking at all. Now we're simply waiting to see how Jordan responds to those comments from the White House today to see if that frayed relationship gets frayed anymore. I'm Tony Clark, CNN, reporting live from Amman.
The latest assault in Israel's southern desert comes amid growing Israeli anxiety about Jordan's position on Iraq. The Israeli army says its forces killed 3 Arab infiltrators who crossed the border from Jordan and opened fire on Israeli troops. More now from CNN's Linda Scherzer.
The gunmen ambushed a bus carrying Israeli soldiers on a well-traveled highway in the Negev desert, 90 miles south of Jerusalem. The 3 heavily armed guerrillas carried knives, hand grenades, and Kalashnikov assault rifles. They managed to throw 1 grenade at the bus, then opened fire before an army patrol arrived and shot the 3 guerrillas to death.
Listen, some machine gun, very hard one, and then some grenade, and that's all.
Israel's defense minister says the gunmen had targeted passing traffic along the highway. He says the guerrillas should have been stopped by the Jordanian army before they ever crossed into Israel.
The idea went into action very quickly and finished off the infiltrators. We have 4 lightly wounded. But it is an indication that the Jordanian government is not sufficiently successful in preventing these kind of incidents, and they know that they're responsible for the prevention of such incidents.
This is the 3rd time this year that guerrillas have infiltrated a border that in times of peace is normally quiet. Defense officials believe these incursions are a result of growing Islamic fundamentalism and anti-Western sentiment in Jordan that's fueled by the war. Israeli soldiers have been on a heightened state of alert on this border since the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. The army says it's prepared for Arab extremists who may try to open a second front against Israel to help Iraq.
Actually, we're also aware of those calls coming from Yasser Arafat to the Palestinians, either in Jordan or in Israel, to proceed and carry out more terrorist activities in Israel.
It is still unclear who these gunmen were, what group they were affiliated with, whether they acted alone. But the Army says that it does appear these men were religious fundamentalists, and that more and more of these border incursions are being carried out by men like them. Linda Scherzer, CNN, Jerusalem.
And in just a moment, we'll take you to the United Nations for a live update from Jeannie Mose.
I'm trying to call overseas with this other long-distance company. I think I remember the number, but I guess not. I call the operator, but she says she can't give me an international number. I say AT&T always could. She says, you're not dealing with AT&T.
If you miss dealing with AT&T, it's easier than ever to come back. Just call 1-800-972-0404 right now and we'll switch you back for free.
They kept saying how much money I'd save, so I kept waiting for that first low bill. Then I get it. I'm not kidding. I thought it was a typo. I mean, where were the big savings?
People who thought they could do better than AT&T are coming back for the real value, like the Reach Out America plan where you can save 24 hours a day. Come back now for free. Call 1-800-972-0404.
Takes longer to get through. They aren't saving me what they said, so why am I doing this? But I thought, you know what? It's going to be a real pain to switch back.
Coming back to AT&T is easy. All you have to do is call us. We'll have you back with dependable AT&T long-distance service in no time. And if you call right now, we'll even switch you for free.
The last straw? When it took so long to reach a real person. I had, some problems, some questions about my bill, but I kept having to wait. I mean, who has time for this?
You can count on AT&T to be there whenever you call. Just like you can count on us to make every conversation sound as clear as being right there. Don't wait to get back the service you deserve. Call now.
You gotta read the fine print.
Where's the big savings?
You gotta follow their rules. I couldn't believe it.
Why am I doing this? I don't get it.
They gotta be kidding. Big savings.
You're not dealing with AT&T.
Oh, I am now.
1-800-972-0404 for dependable, crystal clear AT&T long-distance service. It's easy. And if you call right now, we'll switch you for free. You couldn't pick a better time to come back.
Senior Pentagon officials are telling CNN that the Allies need another week to 10 days of the air war to achieve their objective of destroying roughly 50% of Iraq's military capability in key combat areas. And they say the air campaign is about a week behind because of poor weather. and the unexpected difficulty of destroying Scud missile launchers. In the meantime, U.S. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney and the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, are now in Saudi Arabia. Powell is saying that the next step in the war may be a combination of air and ground attacks.
Thank you, sir. We still have very, very capable ground forces that can be put into the battle if necessary and at the right time. And we'll do it to make air power even that much more effective. It will be a single integrated campaign. We want to get it over with as quickly as possible. We want to do it in a way that minimizes loss of U.S. and Allied life, of course. We also want to get it concluded so that you can get back to those who love you at home and who you miss so very much.
Powell and Cheney are in the war zone for a 2-day tour to assess the war so far and to recommend to President Bush just what the next step should be.
We now go to New York for the latest from the United Nations, and CNN's Jeannie Mose is standing by. Jeannie?
Charles, the overriding topic of interest here at the UN these days seems to be a transcript of a meeting that Saddam Hussein had with the Secretary General of the UN. This meeting was right before the war broke out, a last-ditch unsuccessful effort to avert the war. Iraq has sent a letter to the UN asking that a transcript of the conversation between the Secretary General and Saddam Hussein be circulated as a public document. This is widely viewed here as an effort to sort of embarrass the Secretary General. The UN says that it's perfectly at ease with what was said at that meeting. However, it's refused to release the transcript, saying that it would set a very bad precedent about having confidential diplomatic discussions. If you know that it's going to be released as a public document, that would make it impossible. And so reporters here are scrambling madly trying to get their hands on this transcript. Now, another letter sent by Iraq to the UN was released today, and it concerns the kind of infamous infant formula factory controversy, a factory that was bombed by the Allies. The Allies say it was chemical and biological weapons factory. The Iraqis said it made infant formula. Well, now Iraq has sent a letter to the UN asking that the UN send a mission to come and investigate and make a final determination of what was actually hit. Finally, it was announced today, details were announced of a UN and actually UNICEF mission to send medical supplies to Baghdad. This is going to happen, they hope, sometime next week. The medical supplies are not against any of the UN sanctions. They are allowed to be sent. What would happen is the equivalent of a 747 load of medical supplies, intended mostly for babies, would be sent overland. They would do this in a truck convoy, and the convoy would be getting, hopefully, it would get the approval of both sides to go safely without any interference, and it would go to Baghdad. I'm Jeannie Mose reporting live from the United Nations.
Thank you very much. And in just a moment, we're going to hear from CNN's Christian Amanpour on the mood in Tehran, Iran. Stay with us.
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways.
This Valentine's Day, give her the ultimate in romance with the music and flowers of Teleflora's Twirling Tune Bouquet. Fresh, romantic flowers and a whimsical Cupid Valentine that spins and plays Let Me Call You Sweetheart.
I love thee purely.
It's exclusively from Teleflora. Call or visit your Teleflora florist and ask for the Twirling Tune Bouquet.
I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life.
When you have trouble falling asleep, take the sleeping aid ingredient that's the doctor's choice, the one in Sleepinol. In a survey, 7 out of 10 doctors chose the sleeping aid in Sleepinol. Sleepinol contains the doctor's choice to fall asleep fast.
Over 28 million adults get athlete's foot.
I'm Jim Bird. I had athlete's foot until I used NP27. It has an ingredient recommended by doctors.
Look, NP27 stops the burning, itching of athlete's foot fast.
NP27. Nothing's a better cure for athlete's foot.
While the world watches Iraq in its showdown against Allied forces, in Iran, the focus remains on the Iranians killed in the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, and on the late Ayatollah Khomeini. CNN's Christian Amanpour reports from Iran.
Under the stained glass, the chandelier and gold leaf motif, in a shrine fit for a king lie the remains of the Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's late spiritual leader. The faithful push money through the open slots, funds for the upkeep of this mausoleum. On this, the 12th anniversary of the revolution, the women weep for Khomeini. The men chant and beat their breasts. This shrine is 20 kilometers from the capital, Tehran, but a world away from the political goings-on there. The people who come here don't know and don't much care that their president is trying to forge a coalition between Iran, France, and the Soviet Union in an effort to end the war and shape the region's future. Here they mourn their own war dead, the endless rows of graves testimony to the hundreds of thousands of Iran's sons and brothers who were killed by the Iraqi army.
There are those who say President Rafsanjani may have gotten ahead of his constituency by offering to talk to the U.S. and Iraq. Here at the Martyrs Cemetery, people have little time for either country, and they're wary of their president's moves towards the enemy.
Death to America, they chant in what has become a well-orchestrated ritual. At a ceremony marking the anniversary of the revolution, the Speaker of Iran's parliament accuses the U.S. of going to war not against Iraq, but for oil. Outside among the graves, this woman asks why America is at war. She says the U.S. has no business being in the Gulf. Few forgive the U.S. for supporting Iraq in its war against Iran. America killed all our young people, she says, by helping Saddam and giving him weapons. And yet, if you ask these same people what should become of Saddam Hussein, they say they hope the United States will kill him. Christiana Manpour, CNN, Tehran.
Let's get an update now on what's happening on Wall Street and the other top financial stories. Here's Jan Hopkins at the New York Stock Exchange. Jan?
Thanks, Ralph. With about a half hour left in trading for the week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is back in positive territory. The Dow is up a little bit more than 8 points at a level of 2819.06. Volume is very active, 163 million shares changing hands, and advancing issues are ahead of declining issues by a 4-3 margin. Broader and the secondary markets are all higher at this hour. More central bank buying is stemming a dollar sell-off. The U.S. currency now up a fraction of a cent against the German mark. It's up a third of a cent against the British pound, but it is down 3/4 of a yen against the Japanese currency. Long-term U.S. interest rates are plunging. A Federal Reserve report on tighter lending conditions is fueling hopes for another interest rate cut by the Fed. Treasury's new 30-year bond is up nearly a point in price, and the yield is down to 7.93%. Precious metals added to yesterday's gains. Gold settled up $2.40 and silver up 2 cents. That's the latest from Wall Street. I'm Jan Hopkins reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
Thank you, Jan. Just a moment, we'll be bringing you the Friday afternoon edition of the Pentagon Briefing.
Not going to happen to me.
Not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
The Pico Rivera Plaza is here to serve your community with major retail stores, specialty shops, and services. Here are just a few in the Pico Rivera Plaza. The Pico Rivera Plaza is having their giant sidewalk sale February 15th through the 17th. Savings up to 75%. Don't miss it.
Cable television, looking at possibilities, looking beyond your imagination. Tomorrow, fiber optics, high-definition television for the sharpest picture ever. Beyond tomorrow.
News Ireland.
Honey, tonight we're tuning in the world.
Snow looks great. Those look good too.
Cable television, looking at your future every day.
Pentagon spokesman, well, let's go right now. Tom Kennedy at the Pentagon. Who?
It was John Paul Jones, another maritime guy. Today, as you know, is day 23. We have 505,228 U.S. military in the theater. On the Scuds, 58 have been fired so far. As you know, around 1800 last night, 1756 Washington time, a Scud was launched towards Riyadh. It was intercepted by a Patriot and destroyed. The box score so far is 35 the first week, 18 the second week, 4 the third week, and 1 so far this week. There have been no Scuds launched against Israel since last Saturday. As indicated in this morning's briefing, one launcher with missile aboard is claimed by a pilot report. In terms of targeting, we're targeting the Scuds, the Republican Guard, the Kuwaiti Theater of Operations, restrikes on strategic targets that require it. This morning's briefer, General Johnson, went into some of the numbers, 600-plus sorties into the Kuwaiti Theater and 150 against the Republican Guard. So far, we have in excess of 55,000 sorties, 2,500 of which were flown during the reporting period. There were 0 U.S. losses. Iraqi aircraft that have exercised in the last day, 18, 13 of which went to Iran, and 2 of which were shot down, 2 fencers or fitters, Su-22s, leaving 3 that we didn't get. Aircraft losses, U.S. aircraft losses 15, Iraqi aircraft losses 68. The box score there is 35 aircraft plus 3 helicopters in air-to-air combat, box score of 38-0, and 33 were hit on the ground. Aircraft in Iran, 147. That's our best estimate, 121 of which are fighters. So if you take those destroyed and those in Iran, we're up to around 215. What we haven't counted are those that have been destroyed in shelters because we can't see them in the shelters, but a large number of shelters have been hit and have been either totally destroyed or received severe damage, and there's probably a significant number of additional aircraft that were in those shelters that were destroyed. So we've got a good portion of the Iraqi Air Force accounted for. U.S. casualties, 58, 12 killed, 12 wounded, 27 missing in action, and 8 POWs. There were no casualties in the last 24 hours. Enemy prisoners of war, 936, of whom 50 are officers. The U.S. is holding 40 enemy prisoners of war, and they'll be turned over to the Saudi Arabians. 7 have come across in the last 24 hours, interestingly without weapons or gas masks. On the ground, the situation is quiet. The locks continue to be attacked, as you know. There have been some minor artillery exchanges along the border, but that's about it. We see little to no movement north of the border, and as General Johnson indicated this morning, 600-plus enemy tanks have been destroyed, and the counter command and control campaign is going quite well. At this time, we'd be happy to take your questions. Yes, sir.
General Kelly, the baby factory story seems to come back again, though. And according to today's report, a French engineer which built this factory says it's impossible to convert what he built was a baby factory into what you say is a biological or chemical warfare factory. Can you kind of clarify this and give any type of evidence to say that why this was a biological chemical warfare?
We are confident that it was a biological warfare production facility. It's very possible that they could have brought another country in to put in some baby food or baby milk manufacturing equipment as a cover. That's not without precedent in the history of warfare. And I'll ask Dave to add anything to that he would care to.
Well, I think you're all familiar with the evidence that was in the paper, and we stand behind that assessment. We assess that to be exactly what we believe it is today, was a biological production facility, and we're comfortable with that estimate.
In the rear, yes, sir.
General, what can you tell us, if anything, about this supposed breakthrough by Allied intelligence that is enabling us to much more precisely target the dug-in Iraqi tanks and has, over the past week, caused us to achieve a rate of attrition much higher than before?
I don't know that that's correct, that we've had a breakthrough in intelligence. It was announced this morning that 600-plus tanks have been destroyed. I assume that's what you're referring to. We will not, as I've said several times before, announce on a daily basis what the latest tank count is. From time to time, we'll announce it in theater. That decision was made, and they in fact did it, so now we obviously support it. Our ability to determine what kind of tactical damage we're causing on dug-in units in the field is still not perfect. It's a lot different than determining whether or not you knocked out a bridge, whether or not you knocked out a building. But the best estimate that they have in theater, where these estimates should logically be made, is that more than 600 tanks have been destroyed.
Well, if I may, has there been some sort of an intelligence breakthrough, though, that enables us now to more precisely locate?
Well, we're going on photography. We're going on pilot reports when they come back. We're going on a number of other things that we don't talk about. I think that the buildup in our intelligence database has been consistent. It hasn't been like that. It's been like that. From time to time, we'll make these announcements. That's all I can say. Yes, sir.
General, how many Republican Guards tanks are included in the 600 plus?
I don't have a breakout of that, but they're well represented, I'm certain, in that 600.
Certain that some are included in this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're included. Yes, sir.
Give us now your overall assessment of the reduction in fighting capability, first of the Iraqi Army and then of the Republican Guard.
I think General Johnson said this morning that he thought we had gotten about 10% of their tanks, or maybe slightly more than that, maybe as much as 15. I'm not certain what he said. But one of the reasons that we have consistently tried to stay away from over-relying on numbers is because the combat capability of the unit is reliant on a number of different things, not just the number of tanks that they have lost. For example, I'm a tanker and have been one for over 34 years. Their tanks have been sitting in holes now for a long time. I don't know about their tanks. I'm not an expert on them, but I know if you don't get our tanks out and exercise them, if you don't bore sight them, if you don't verify that bore sight, if from time to time you don't fire check rounds to make sure that bore sight is still true, they may not be in very good shape when it comes time to fight. Don't know that to be a fact, but I do know that it's a factor that a commander would want to think about. How well we are doing in squeezing the supply lines and preventing POL from getting up to those tanks, not only diesel fuel, but the lubricants they need for that track is part of what goes into the equation. The fact that the track themselves haven't been exercised and the shock absorbers in the system haven't been exercised is going to have an impact on them. So what the commander's got to do is sit back, and that's why I said it's more of an art than a science, and decide what all of those influences are and what he thinks they amount to in terms of the enemy's ability to pursue battle. I realize that doesn't give a specific answer to your question, but I don't think there is one.
For a specific answer, but if you sort of specifically answered on tanks there, but give me your qualitative assessment of the fighting capability of the Iraqi Army and the Republican Guards in particular.
That is precisely the reason that the Secretary and the Chairman are in the theater talking to General Schwarzkopf today. I can't give you that because I don't know what it is. I'm not the commander over there. He's the one that is responsible to make that judgment. As soon as my bosses get it and decide to release it, I'm sure that they'll do it. So that's about as far as I can go. Yes, sir.
Just one numbers question first. Are the 150 sorties in the Republican Guard included in the 600 plus in the Kuwaiti theater?
I would think they are, yeah. Yeah,
and secondly, could you describe how in the last few days or yesterday the number of strikes against in the Kuwaiti theater have increased in comparison to the overall number of strikes? Has there been a shifting towards more strikes?
Well, as you've seen in the past week or so, there has been not an increase in the number of sorties on a daily basis. That's remained relatively constant at 25 or 2,600. What we have begun to do is shift away from some of the deep strategic targets towards the tactical targets. Over the past 3, 4, 5 days, I would say that the number of sorties against the Kuwaiti theater of operations in general and the Republican Guards in particular have remained constant at about 600 to 700.
Is that because of the job has been largely done on those deep strategic targets?
We feel comfortable that we have achieved a degree of success against the strategic capability to wage war. That doesn't mean it's not continuing to be struck, because I indicated in the targeting today restrike of those targets. But we feel that we can begin to concentrate on the forces in the field, which in a final analysis represent the massive combat power that Iraq possesses. Yes, ma'am.
POWs, we haven't talked about that for a while.
U.S. or enemy?
U.S.
Yes.
Saddam Hussein has stopped his television shows. Do we have any, without going into detail, do we have any intelligence that other people have been captured? Have we gotten any notification from Iraq that they have any prisoners?
We have heard nothing from Iraq. We have heard nothing from the International Red Cross. The situation hasn't changed since General Schwarzkopf discussed it, where he challenged the Iraqis to treat their prisoners of war as well as we, the coalition, are treating our prisoners of war. So we simply, we don't have eyes inside the country there to look at these things, and their actions with regard to prisoners of war, of course, have been disgraceful.
General,
Yes, sir.
General, for many months the building has said the Iraqi forces are dug in and ready to go on the offensive on short notice. Is that still your assessment today, and do you still characterize them as an effective fighting force?
We don't say ready because that implies an intent that we can't read. We say that they are defending. They have the capability to attack with relatively short notice. I say relatively because our eyes are looking at them all the time, and as they begin to come out of their holes, we'll know that. So it's not going to be a big sneak attack. They also have the capability, we say, to withdraw, although we don't think that's too likely. Interestingly, and I mentioned it, I think, the day before yesterday, they came out of Kafji and came across the line to see what would happen. Well, what happened was a disastrous defeat for them. That'll be validated after this thing's over. And what they began to realize, I think, was that it's not very wise to come out of your fortified positions and cross the line if you don't have any air force at all, and the enemy has a very powerful air force. They lost 50 tanks in that very short engagement south of the border, and they lost some more north of the border. So, and I think it's been said several times in the past days, when they come out of those fortified positions, which they would have to do in order to attack, they make a much better target than they do when they're sitting in them.
General,
yes, sir.
Can you confirm for us the reports that the Syrians unit showed a very poor performance during the last couple of days? This is number one. Number two, how badly the fact that the Syrians does not let the Americans to fly over their airspace affect the assessment of the damage there, especially on eastern Iraq?
Yeah, to answer your first question first, we have no indication whatever that the Syrians performed poorly in their very minor skirmish with the Iraqis the other day. As a matter of fact, the indication I've had is that they performed quite well. The Iraqis came across the border, they exchanged fire, or the Iraqis withdrew, and there were no casualties. So I can't see how that could be interpreted as poor performance. In terms of Syrian airspace or anyone else's airspace, we don't discuss what the specific arrangements are at all. I will tell you that the coalition in general, and the United States in particular, is having no difficulty getting to where the targets are.
General?
Yes, sir.
Speaking militarily, what is the effect of Jordan's siding with Iraq? Is it a new artillery front? Is it a Scud Vantage? What is it?
That's sort of a difficult question to ask because it deals with what the Jordanians' intent is. All we have from them so far that I know of is rhetoric, not action. I don't think they're in very much of a position to play much of a role in the military side of this equation. And Jordan, they're an unfortunate country. They're sitting right next to Iraq. They've gotten some help from Iraq in the past. They've also gotten considerable help from the West in the past. And so they're in a difficult spot. But to date, they have posed no military threat to the coalition. If they do, then decisions will be made at the political level as to the response.
I'm sorry. The reason I asked is that the anger in the United States seemed to have risen a little bit, at least officially in the last day since the speech by King Hussein. Do you have any reason for that dismay to have increased?
I don't. King Hussein, as you know, and you're getting out of my area of expertise, and I'm going to get out of it very quickly. He has some problems in his own country, and he's got his own political problems, and how that influences him is something he's got to live with, and the State Department and the policy folks, both of whom I avoid, will have to address that. Yes, sir.
General,
Could I get you to review for a minute this whole debate that seems to be going on about civilian casualties in Iraq and collateral damage? You've repeatedly said that you and the Allies are avoiding civilian targets, yet clearly civilians are being killed in Iraq. How widespread is this? Is this about what you expected? What are you doing to avoid it, and why is it happening to the extent it seems to be?
Okay, you start with a syllogism that I don't necessarily accept because I don't know what the answer is, which is obviously there are civilian casualties in Iraq. What you're seeing coming out of Iraq, of course, is very closely controlled. And I don't know what the situation is there because we don't have a free press in Iraq like we do other places. Having said that, is there a possibility that there have been civilian casualties? Yes, there is. We are doing everything in our power to avoid civilian casualties. We've said that every single time we've been asked a question, but I think the briefer in Riyadh yesterday, the day before, said war is a dirty business, and it is. And I've said before, when a bullet comes out of a gun, it doesn't have any friends. It's going to hit who's ever in the region. But one thing I find personally extremely interesting is when we are broadcasting, when one of the networks is broadcasting from Iraq and the sirens go off, the people continue to go about their business, and they don't show any great sense of urgency, which leads me to believe at least a little bit that we are working very hard to avoid civilian casualties, and they know that.
But if I could follow, is there a problem with Iraq putting military targets or military facilities in civilian regions, or moving its Scud launchers or whatnot to intentionally try to undermine that ability and force civilian casualties?
Yeah, we know there's some of that. It has not reached the point yet where we think that we have to go after targets that are in civilian facilities or religious facilities or archaeological facilities, and there's a great deal of interest in that as well. Most of his strategic and tactical capability is still available to us in a target-rich environment. It's interesting to note that no information of a military nature is authorized to be broadcast from Iraq. Only information on civilian casualties, and whether they're trumped up or not, I don't know. I know there's a possibility that there might have been collateral damage. That's what we refer to it as. We hope there has not been, but there can't be any guarantees.
General, there was a recent pool report just moved before we came in here, quoting a Captain Bill of the USS Wisconsin as saying he's been firing his 16-inch guns in support of a Marine recon unit inside Kuwait. Do you know anything about that?
I certainly do not know anything about that. I really do not know anything about that. Captain Bill, you say?
Yes.
No. We know the Wisconsin's been firing, but we know the Wisconsin has been firing at tactical targets. Now, what he may have been referring to, and this is just conjecture on my part, is a Marine forward air controller who is in the vicinity of Kuwait, or Marines south of the border who might be calling for fire. That's possible, but I don't think that Captain Bill sitting out on a ship really knows very much about what's going on the land. It's just somebody's calling for fire, giving him coordinates. The fire is extremely effective from both the military and the psychological standpoint, because each one of those rounds is a 2,000-plus pound bomb. Yes, sir.
General, can we talk about Iran for a second? Days ago, you said there was no no air cap at all, and now there appears to be an air cap because you're stopping planes going there. What changed in policy? Why are planes stopping?
I don't know that I said there was no air cap at all. I said that we will shoot down any Iraqi aircraft that we catch in Iraqi airspace. Whether we put an air cap up in the vicinity of the Iranian border inside Iraq or not is a tactical matter that we're just not going to go into. Some of them we shoot down. Obviously, some we do not shoot down. But I also said at the same time, I think, that the focus of our effort is against the tactical targets that are in the Kuwaiti theater of operations, which represent the greatest threat to coalition forces.
Follow up, you said part of the problem was it was way too expensive to do. Has that changed? And also...
No, what I said was there are not enough airplanes in the world to put a 100% cap over the entire country of Iraq, which is similar in size to the state of California. When it is possible for us to have airplanes in any vicinity where we think we can get some Iraqi aircraft, then we can do it, and they're not busy doing other things like flying cap over our attack aircraft that are going in the Kuwaiti theater of operations. We do. Some we get, some we don't. and I also said at the same time that those aircraft that have gone to Iran don't represent a major threat to us right now. I'm aware of what the fleet commander said, and he's exactly right. He has to be concerned about them, but right now they're sitting on the ground doing nothing. Yes, ma'am.
Dave, if I can follow up one other question, what kind of intelligence do you have now in Iran? Do we have things on the ground there to tell us what these pilots, has anyone talked to the pilots?
If we had intelligence in Iran, we certainly wouldn't discuss it here. Yes, ma'am.
Just give us some general ballpark.
No, we wouldn't get into it.
General, could you, somewhat along the same lines, could you update us on your assessment of Iraqi assets in countries other than Iran? Your assessment of what they may have in Yemen or the Sudan or other areas in the region?
Dave, that's more intelligence than an operation.
Well, we talked about Sudan, we talked about Yemen before as being essentially sympathetic bystanders. I think that categorizes and describes their role in all this conflict about as well as you could. Hardware, I'd prefer not to comment on what we believe to be on location, both in terms of their own indigenous capability plus anything else they may have had.
I think we can say they do not represent a significant military threat, and if we're required to do something there, we would certainly do the right thing. Is there anybody over here? I'm not getting any hands. Okay.
There's been a significant shifting of coalition forces over the past couple of days. Normally the other side shifts as well. Can you describe what the Iraqis are doing?
The Iraqis, to the best of my knowledge, and I'll let Dave add to this, are sitting in their holes hiding.
No response.
I have seen no response.
No, we're looking at that very carefully. We've seen some minor repositioning. We're watching it very closely, but we don't see anything that's concentrated, any kind of massive movement or anything that we're concerned about at this point. It still looks to be a reassessment of the Kafji situation for them.
Follow up on that?
Let me just add to that before your follow-up. They have learned that when they come out of their defensive positions that they are vulnerable and they get attacked because we see them coming out. And I think that's kept them with their head down. And I think that they are still trying to figure out what happened to them at Kafji, or if they figure that out, in light of that, what they could do next. And I don't think they have the answer yet.
So far as you can say, what happened to the units coming back from Kafji that were described as disoriented and disconnected when they went back through the lines?
They were engaged.
And then, did they reassemble themselves? Are they an effective fighting force again?
You can't get into that deeply. I will tell you a good portion of them did not reassemble themselves because no longer had the capability to do that. Yes, sir.
Follow up to Captain Harrington. How would you characterize their capability of determining what sort of moves we're making on the ground? I mean, they don't have air assets. What kind of capabilities do they have?
Well, that's a very good question. The difference in our ability to inform our decision makers about the battle scene is significantly different than that of Saddam Hussein's. We assess that he's a little bit confused by what's going on. He doesn't have the kind of assets that we have, either tactically or nationally, to help him solve that problem. So he's got a problem, and we're not, at this point, absolutely convinced that he really knows exactly what's going on down in the Kuwaiti theater of operations.
I'd go a little further and say his information is very poor about what's going on south of the border and is somewhat degraded about what's going on north of the border. Yes, sir. Right
I
here.
have a question about, given that the Iraqis are extensively using decoys, what is the possibility, or what is CENTCOM doing to assure that the EPWs that come across aren't part of an overall deception plan?
Well, that's a good question, and they're working it very hard. Not only those that come across in terms of being EPWs, but decoys up in theater. We're working techniques now to discriminate a real tank from a wooden tank. Go ahead.
Well, yesterday's pictures of POWs said they hadn't had water, hadn't food, and they were more or less clean-shaven. You got to try to have a little water to do that.
Well,
get enough water to shave, and get enough water to drink, and they're lying. So.
Well, they might have electric razors. And let me address that. The prisoners that came across, I think it was the day before yesterday, it might have been the day before that, looked good, had decent uniforms on, and had money in their pockets, but were ravenously hungry. They just hadn't been being fed. Now, the internal discipline within the unit could demand that a man shave, and there's a lot of ways to shave. I've done it without water, I reckon. You have too. I sure as heck, if I were short water, wouldn't be wasting it shaving. But I think, and there's a lot of anecdotal stories from the prisoners of war, enemy prisoners of war, that are coming out, that things are pretty tough up there. I think General Johnson said this morning he thinks the locks variably have been degraded about 90%. One of the biggest tonnages that an Army uses is food, so I don't think they're getting fed very well. No, you had you
General,
yes.
The British military spokesman suggested yesterday that a ground war is now inevitable. The French president suggested the same thing. Why are you reluctant, if you are still reluctant, to say that a ground war is inevitable?
Well, because I don't work for the British general or the French president. I work for my three bosses, the chairman, the secretary, and the president. They have not decided yet. And as I said, they're over there right now discussing that. And when the time comes, if it's necessary, we'll move into the next phase of this campaign. And as General Powell pointed out, if you move into a land portion of the campaign, that doesn't change it. It's extremely key for everybody to remember that the only thing that can be successful in combat is a balanced, combined arms team. If you went in with only one arm, the odds are you might not, or the odds are you would not be successful. That's happened recently in wars where armies have spent too much on one element of combat power to the detriment of the other. Then they get into war and they didn't have enough artillery, this, that, or the other. So it's a balanced effort right now. Part of that balanced effort is sitting on the ground in the form of land forces that have not yet been committed. When the orchestration of the total campaign dictates that land forces be committed, if it does, then they'll be committed. And the way in which they'll be committed will depend on what the situation is. I think all of the leadership has been saying that this thing is proceeding generally according to our campaign plan. That doesn't mean the campaign plan, incidentally, is immutable or isn't being changed, and that we don't have the art to do that. We do, and it is a dynamic plan. We'll do what's right when the time comes, and announcing what that is, it seems to me, doesn't help anybody except Hussein. Yes, sir.
General Kelly, the Saudis had shut down one desalination plant just as a precaution against encroachment by the slick. How dependent are American troops along the Saudi border on the water that plant produces, and what can be done to fill in the gap?
U.S. troops are not dependent on any desalination plant. U.S. troops have adequate water right now. The information I have on the slick is it appears to be a serious problem, but not a catastrophe in terms of the immediate demands in the region. I'm sure ecologically it's going to be a disaster for a long time to come. So I think we're okay there.
General Kelly, follow up. I'm still having a few problems with these 147 Iraqi planes, 121 fighters. Now, you're saying that this is not a threat, but there have been two things that Iraqis have done in this war, is ship planes to Iran and fire Scud missiles. At what point do you see this becoming a threat in this campaign? Apparently, they have a pretty sizable air force now in Iran, and that was one of the serious considerations.
They are at airfields. I see them becoming a threat the minute they take off and turn south. And I see us responding to that the minute they take off and turn south. Whether we would violate another country's airspace right now, we would not. But we'd sure be waiting for them when they got to the border.
Won't it be too late, though, General Kelly? I mean, we're talking about an air force. You're taking a man out of power, but you don't take his toys with him. So, to me, it seems like that may be a little too late, don't you think?
No, I don't think. I think if first of all, there are only X number of aircraft in that country capable of launching the Exocet missile. We know what they are. We know where they are. They're the ones we would be concerned about, and I think we'd shoot them all down. Remember, this is the Air Force that has been unable to date to get one airplane south of the Kuwaiti or Iraqi border. This is the Air Force that the Commander-in-Chief said yesterday on the way out swung by the palace and dropped the bomb. So I don't know how much Saddam Hussein can rely on those individuals over there. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned on the Jordan issue, I was wondering, Jordan has a number of U.S. planes and missiles and equipment like that. Would you think that the fact that Jordan has U.S. equipment, wouldn't that give some edge to Iraq should they decide to go in that direction?
I wouldn't think so. Jordan is sitting just west of one of the largest air armadas ever assembled, and they would know what to do in the event that that very small force elected to play in this game.
But in terms of intelligence, would not that they could pass along perhaps some intelligence that Iraq might not otherwise have?
They could. That might be a problem. I don't think it's going to do them a lot of good since they can't convince any of their pilots to come up.
General, can you assess if there's any, General, can you assess how quick a ground war could go?
Just to give you a few quick numbers here, the ones that Pete has been updating you on.
Old ally, the man he